following. And next up, what we're going to talk about is, and this is a great topic to talk about following the 2025 economic forecast, we're going to look at capturing the 2025 auto customer and basically looking at streaming TV in a linear world. And to help us lead that conversation, I'd like to welcome up Brad Seitter. Brad, come on up. How are you? Good to see you again.
Nice to see you again as well.
Absolutely. Stage is yours. Enjoy.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'm going to grab the remote right here. Thank you very much. Well, for everyone here, we're the hardy ones, right? We all now have stories to tell everyone about how we all trekked through the single greatest snowstorm in New Orleans history to be here. And I, myself, everyone at TVB, and I know everyone at NADA, thank you for making the attempt to be here. So what are we going to talk about today? Today I'm going to address the number one question we receive from dealers across the country, large and small. Doesn't matter whether big dealer or small dealer. The number one question we receive is, how much money do I allocate to broadcast TV and streaming? Now that's the big question, and we're in luck today because this week is the week every year that GFK, Growth for Knowledge, releases their annual media consumer research study that looks at reach, time spent, and consumer influence for the automotive consumer. When we break that down for you, everyone should leave here today with a really good idea about how I allocate my media dollar between broadcast TV and all the different forms of streaming. And if you have any questions afterwards, I'm glad to answer them. So with that, let's jump in. So let's take a look at reach. This again is from GFK, Growth for Knowledge, well known. They take a look at the automotive consumers. We're looking at 18 plus now. We can look at any demo. We'll look at a few of those later. But how does reach work? So you'll see on reach, they find that 83% of reach comes from television. And inside television, most of that reach comes from broadcast TV. Then when we put together a reach campaign, the error a lot of people or consumers, agencies make, they look at it and go, all right, so you have 83% reach on television. So if I add in cable, for example, at 66%, all of a sudden I have 149% reach. It doesn't work that way. Obviously, you can't have more than 100% reach. So how does this work? It's duplication of viewer. Where is the viewer at the most? Where are they spending their time the most? Television. So they start and end their day with television. That's where the majority of the consumers are at. That's why my reach is so high at 83%. And then that same viewer branches off and they do other things. Who are those viewers? They're us. We listen to radio. We go to social media. We'll turn on cable, watch a sports program, maybe go to Nat Geo, whatever it is that you do. You'll go to streaming. You'll go to Netflix, Hulu, wherever. Watch your famous or your favorite streaming program. But you're the same person doing all these things. But the majority of us spend our time with broadcast TV, and then we go to these other places. That's why the reach is smaller and the other forms of media. And there's another way to make sense of it. I like looking at it this way. So if we look at reach again, broadcast TV at almost 83%, that's where the majority of my reach is. So how does reach work? If I add in cable, so remember cable was at 66% reach, but it's the same person. I'm not adding in 66% reach. I'm only adding in another 0.5% reach because it's the same person. I've already reached them on my broadcast TV commercial. Same with streaming. I come down here with streaming. I'm only adding in another 1.8% reach because it's the same person. You're going to hear this common theme, duplication of viewer. That's how reach works. I want to be in a place where I reach them the most, and then everything else is additional to the campaign I already have. Now this study, and this is a surprise for us, we found out that actually I receive more reach if I add in some digital products. And that's because that's a slightly different consumer that's getting their news, sports information online than they are through the traditional linear way. But here's a question we receive from every advertiser, whether it's automotive or in other categories, and that is, how do I reach the consumer who's watching video, streaming video, where they receive no ads? Now, as advertisers, we like to think of the consumers in these individual silos. You're a streaming video consumer. You're a radio listener. You're a social media user. When in reality, we do all those things. All right, yes. This study says 51% of auto intenders yesterday watched some form of streaming on any device where they received no ads. So the advertiser thinks, I can't reach those people. And the study says, no, that's not true. I've already reached them. Through my broadcast TV ad, where I already had an advertisement, I can reach 89% of the 51%. Again, that duplication of viewer. We're not in individual silos. We watch and do other things. And so by being in a place where they spend the most time, where I have the highest reach, I've already reached that consumer. So how do you reach the consumers? Watching video, streaming video where there's no ads, I reach them through my broadcast TV ad. And if I add in the other TV digital products, I can actually get that reach up to 94%. All right, now this comes out every month. This is from Nielsen. And the reason I show this is because it does a great disservice to advertisers in any category. But we're going to look at and think about the automotive consumer right now, because your agency, if you're an auto dealer that deals with an agency, they're going to show you this chart. And they're going to use this chart, again, it comes out every month, and they say this is how you allocate your media dollar. But you can't use it that way, and here's why. So Nielsen comes out with it, and they say that linear TV is about 55% of all total viewing. Streaming is almost 38%. But what Nielsen's not going to tell you, but we're going to tell you, is that 38% of the streaming number, that includes all the streaming places where consumers are at watching video where they receive no ads. Now, as an advertiser, I need to back out those places. Hey, we got the marching band coming. This is a great entry music for us. You're in New Orleans, you got to have a marching band come by. All right, so what do we do as advertisers? This is from, so if you look at this, we're looking now at all different forms of streaming platforms where the consumer's at. These green bars, the green bars represent places or the percentages of consumers that are watching streaming video where there are no ads. Now, as an advertiser, we have to back out all those green bars. If you back out all these green bars, this is what the chart looks like. Thank you, marching band. You're doing a great job. Wonderful. So, if we look at linear television, that number now jumps to almost 68%. 68% when you back out all of the streaming video that the consumers are watching with no ads. This is a real number, and now streaming video becomes about 32%. So that's a huge difference. This is the chart that we want everyone to use. Now, we've talked to Nielsen, and I'm also glad to announce to you that Nielsen looked at this, and they said, you're right. For us to be able to provide a service to advertisers, we need to provide them an accurate pie chart that represents ad-supported platforms only. So starting this month, Nielsen said, we are now going to publish this pie chart that will help advertisers know exactly where ad-supported platform viewing is at, because that's what's important to us. ComScore, everybody knows that was Nielsen? Everybody knows ComScore. They're an alternative to Nielsen. Well, ComScore came out and said, you know what, we want to do the same thing. They use a slightly different methodology, and this is what their information looks like. They said when we do it, we show that traditional linear viewing is about 85.3% of all total viewing, and streaming is only about 14.7%. Again, we're looking at ad-supported streaming. ComScore, like Nielsen, has already announced they're going to do this chart every month. They just started doing it quarterly, and now starting in January, they're going to be doing that every month. And this will help every advertiser and every agency make sense of how the consumers are watching video and on what platforms. Right, so back to our campaign that we want to build. This is from Bill Harvey. He looked at Nielsen One data. Again, everything we show you is independent, third-party data. Now, what did Bill Harvey look at? He wanted to look at two campaigns. One campaign that did not use traditional linear television, and campaigns that used traditional television. So let's look over here on the left, these red dots. Where does my reach come? If I do not use linear television, all those campaigns, you see the red dots, the disbursements, are all below 20% reach. Very hard to get reach in a campaign if I'm not using traditional linear television. Now we want to look at campaigns that include linear television. And look how the reach jumps. All those blue dots now jump up around 50%. You're getting some around 75%, even some up around 80, 90%. My reach comes from linear television. You saw in the GFK study. These are two different studies, but they back up each other. The GFK study says 83% reach with television. You're seeing it now with advertisers. These are actual advertisers. But Bill Harvey digs a little deeper. He wanted to know, okay, so at what percentage of my allocation really hits the reach number? So he looked at these campaigns and he said, okay, of all those campaigns that use linear TV, if their allocation was 65% to linear television, their reach jumped to 75%. But if I increase my reach to 80%, my media allocation, to 80%, so I've increased my media allocation now to 80% linear television, look what happens to the reach number. That reach number jumps to 91%. Only broadcast TV can reach 91% of the people here. That's how powerful that medium is. There's no other medium in the world that you can use that has the reach capability to reach 91%. That's a huge number. And we're going to dig a little deeper that in just a second when we look at political. But right now I want to look at time spent. So again, GFK, these all tie together. Reach, allocation, time spent. They also look at time spent, and we're looking at just automotive. Where's that automotive consumer spending the most time with all those different forms of media? You see television at 5 hours and 40 minutes a day. 3 hours and 37 minutes a day of it is spent on broadcast TV. Local news, sports, weather. What do you think all the folks here in New Orleans were doing when they were facing a 12-inch snowstorm? You're watching your local meteorologist. You want to know what's happening. That's where you turn to. You're watching Sunday Night Football, all your favorite shows, the majority of your day parts. I'm spending my time with broadcast TV. I'm branching off and doing other things. You saw it in reach. You see it in time spent as well. And on linear, you see how's that divided? Again, just look at this again. Television, 5 hours and 40 minutes. Between all these different devices, you see most of my time is spent on linear television. That backs up what Nielsen is showing on their pie chart, where 68% of all viewing is done on linear television. A completely different study, GFK, they find the same thing. Now, how does that translate to the consumer? Because this is what we're interested in. You're trying to sell cars and trucks. GFK also looks at influence. There's a direct correlation between how much time you spend with a particular type of media and how consumers answer on an influence study. They asked a very simple question in this study. That question is, in your decision to purchase a car or truck, what was your primary media influence? Now, they had 25 different types of media to choose from. Not all 25 different types are going to show up, just the ones that had 2% or more. But I want to point your attention to the blue bar across all stages of the consumer decision process. And you see that blue bar is television. Pop's the highest in every single one. The next closest is 5%. There's a bunch of the smaller ones you can pick out. Social media, streaming, radio, they're all up in the smaller percentages. 45% awareness, 36% all the way down to purchase. Broadcast TV is the number one most important influencer to the auto consumer. Reach, time spent, and then you see it working in the consumer's mind. And this is really important to us as advertisers because this is what we're most interested in, and we have a chance, a unique opportunity to look inside the consumer's mind, and they're giving you the answer. They're telling you how they're influenced. And all we have to do is take our media allocation and match it up next to what the consumers are telling us, next to reach, next to time spent, the Bill Harvey study, and we do that, we find the optimum level of media allocation for our business to grow our dealership, sell more cars and trucks. That's ultimately what it's about. And when we look at those demos and consumer influence, and I know a lot of auto dealers, you like to look at 25, 54. There's not a whole lot of 25-year-olds buying $50,000 vehicles. The average median price has come down a little bit. It's still about $49,000. But we look at age 35, 64. Those are the people buying cars and trucks. If you look at 80% of your business, there's very few dealers I talk to. I see a lot of them throughout the country. And I ask them, what's 80% of your business? And almost any dealership, and you can ask yourself this, who's 80% of your customer coming in and buying a car or truck from you right now? And most of them are going to answer over the age of 40. So I'm going to say over 45. 35 to 64-year-olds, 51% said television. You get up over 50, and that might be a lot of your business, consumers over the age of 50, 61% of those consumers said television is my number one influencer. Time spent, consumer influence, reach, media allocation. It's not that we don't buy streaming, we do other things. Absolutely should be in streaming. I should be in social media. There's other things that I should buy and do, but I have to do them in the right allocation. If I'm somewhere between 60 and 80% broadcast TV, and I use the other percentages on streaming and the other forms of media, then I'm hitting the sweet spot on my bat. That's how you hit your goals at the dealership. And I want to end with this. We just came out of a political cycle. And everyone here knows, if you were buying television, that your commercial in October was hard to get on broadcast TV. It's hard to get on broadcast TV for a reason. Because political dominates in the month of October and the first week of November. Why? Because they know this is the only place that moves the needle. They have 60 days to influence the voter, and it's win or go home. And for them, and they have all the research in the world, and way more money than we have to spend. And it doesn't matter whether you're in the state of Pennsylvania or Ohio or Florida or Texas, they concentrate their ad dollar where they win races. This is from David Axelrod. He was a guest of ours at a convention we had in New York. David Axelrod is sitting on a stage just like this. There are other political consultants there. The other political consultants were talking about all the digital objects that they have to buy now and how that's the trend and that's where we're going to win races in the future. And David Axelrod, even though many of us might look at him as old school, he stopped everyone and he said, hey, look, I tell you what, you take your candidate and you buy whatever you want on the digital side. As much of it you want, anything you want, you just can't buy broadcast TV. And then I'm going to take my candidate and I'm going to buy nothing but broadcast TV. And I'm going to beat you by 10 points every single time. Because broadcast TV is the nuclear bomb. That's a direct quote from David Axelrod. So we hope that this shares a little information with you. I will share the entire presentation with you. I'm glad to do that. There's 30, 40 other slides in that. If you want to take a deep dive, you can email me at brad@tvb.org, and we're glad to share the information with you. With that, thank you very much. Errol, I'm going to turn it back to you, sir.
Brad, thank you. Go ahead, please, grab a seat.
Sure,
We've got a little bit more time left. And, so I was sitting on the side, and, of course, I always have questions, right? So,
yeah, you bet.
Let me first share some personal stuff, and then I'll give you why I have the question. So my household right now, I have 19, 17, 11, and 10 months old, okay? And
that's a big household, by the way.
That's a big household, yes, absolutely. But the reason I bring that up is because when we think about broadcast TV, it's changing, right? Especially now, I think with technology, a lot of the TVs are internet-based or certain platforms. Like I think about my son, he has a Roku TV, all that stuff. My question is, as we can continue to see broadcast TV change in the way that we access it, do you feel like that's going to impact some of the things that we're currently experiencing with trends and with reach overall?
So that's a great question. We always get the question about the younger viewers and their trends and what they're doing. The 19-year-old that you have. My daughter is 26. She consumes television in a much different way than we do. But I can also say that hasn't really changed a lot. Now there's more options. You have streaming. We didn't have that when we were younger. Yeah. But when I was 18, 19, 20 years old, 24 years old, I certainly didn't watch a lot of local news. I can tell you that. I never turned on the 6 o'clock news, or if you're on the East Coast or West Coast, the 11 o'clock news. That has never changed. What happens as you get older, we call it life stages.
Okay.
All right, so they have a lot of different options now. Yes, you have a lot of different ways to watch broadcast TV. You can get it through streaming. You can get it through the linear signal. You can watch it on your iPad or other devices. But what we know about the viewer, as they age and their lifestyles change, so now you have kids in the house. Now you have a home. You're interested in a lot more things than you were interested in when you were younger. And I'm the same way. So what are we interested in now? Well, we have a home. We're interested in things that go in the house and things that affect the house, the economy. I'm interested in weather. I'm interested in how I get to work or how it's going to affect my week or planning or electric bills, whatever I may have. So I'm watching a lot more news. I'm interested more in world news and local news and national news. And so your habits change as you get older and you pay more attention. That's why when you look at all those older demos, which hasn't changed in 40 years or 50 years of television, older demos always watch more TV. It's because you're interested in different things. Now, will that younger consumer who's 19 now, when they're 36, are they going to watch more local news? Yes, they are.
Right.
Are they going to get it a different way? Well, they may still be getting it through streaming. They may get it through YouTube TV, but they're still going to be turning on and watching their local channel because you want your local weather person. You want to see your local news. I want my traffic. I want to know what's going on in my local market. And I watch a lot of sports. I'm a big sports guy. If you watch a lot of sports, still the NFL, a lot of major sports things, that's on broadcast TV. And I will find it on a little different ways. So another way to look at it is all these broadcast companies that are out there, ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, and everyone who owns one. So you're talking the franchisees, the Hearst, the Nextstars, the Grays. They're media content providers. They're entertainment providers. So what are they doing? They're providing the content. And it's up to us, the consumer, on how we watch it.
Absolutely.
It's the same content on the linear channel if you're watching your local ABC affiliate as you're going to get on a streaming channel. I may get it a different way, but that's the content I'm going to turn to see.
And that's a great point that you brought up, and I kind of wanted to touch on that because I think sometimes there can be a confusion when we talk about broadcast TV, depending on maybe age of the person that's consuming that, right? So I think some of us, when we think broadcast TV, we think about local stations, 247, but like you mentioned, broadcast TV now has expanded to where I can still access my broadcasting TV through streaming, but ultimately it still falls under that umbrella of being broadcast TV. So I think that's important to clarify because some people just might think, well, I'm thinking old antenna TV when I say broadcast, and that's not necessarily the case anymore. My other question was, because I know that watching sports is a big part of that. And we've seen recently where streaming platforms are starting to get into sports broadcasting. Example, like Netflix as an example, they've recently started to enter in. If that trend continues, do you think that that would potentially cause a shift in where we're looking to allocate our reach, or do you think that it's going to kind of still continue with the same platform, even if the sports element went out of that broadcast umbrella?
If we look at the NFL season, and we take a look at the Kansas City Chiefs, for example, and I know they're a very divisive team for whatever reason right now. You either love them or you hate them. But we're going to look at numbers for a second.
Okay.
So they were on Netflix. Netflix carried the Christmas Day game.
Yes.
And it was the highest viewing percentage that Netflix has ever had for any program.
Okay.
And they, on their numbers, clocked in at about 20-something million. I think it was like 20, 21 million, right in that area. All right, the broadcast game, so if you're carrying that same game on broadcast, you look at the broadcast games. On the Chiefs, again, they lead on a lot of those categories. The regular season Chiefs-Bills game, that clocked in at about 34 million people. So your ability to still reach the majority of consumers is going to be on broadcast TV. Yes. Now, are those same broadcast viewers going to find a game on a streaming partner, whether it's on Amazon on Thursday night or it's on a special like Netflix or Peacock, who carry one game a year? The league is going to sell to a high bidder for individual games in special niche areas. But they also know, what does the NFL know? They protect their product. Yeah. Look what the NFL does different than Major League Baseball, NBA, any other professional leagues that are out there. They know that we have to talk to the majority of the people that are out there. We have to be able to get our product to the majority of consumers that are out there, and the way to do that is broadcast. And that's why they keep the majority of their games on broadcast TV, because everybody can receive it. Only select people can see Netflix or Amazon. And if you look at people that go to Netflix, they watch the game, it's really great to look at this number. How many people signed up for Netflix to see a game and then within 30 days drop it? Same with Amazon. All right, so they go on, they want to see that show, but then they drop it.
Right.
And the NFL is very aware of that as well. Is it going to change in the future? The NFL is still going to take the money from streaming, but they're not going to all of a sudden stream the Super Bowl solely on Amazon or Netflix. Because why would you take your product and only go to a small percentage of your potential audience when I can deliver it to everybody?
Absolutely.
And so that vehicle is still going to be there in the future, the broadcast side.
Yeah, that's great. And just the 14 million difference, that's a big difference. 20 million versus 34 million, that's a lot of people. And like you mentioned, even though that was record numbers for Netflix, it still didn't compare with what we've been used to when consumption of the game. So I think that's a very good point to highlight. And I also think, to your point, I think broadcast has been that consistent arena, because one of the limitations that you do have with the streaming platforms is sometimes the refresh, the rebuffering, I know I watched the big fight, the Jake Paul, Mike Tyson.
Oh my gosh,
thing,
yeah, I was on that.
And everyone was like, I can't, it keeps refreshing.
Yeah.
So to your point, broadcast TV, it seems like consistently the way to go no matter how you access it. I think that's the big key.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, streaming has its place, but for live sports, it buffers.
Yeah.
It's also about a minute to a minute and a half, some are even longer than that, behind live plays. So if you are watching it on streaming, and I know a lot of people do this, and you're watching a big game, whatever it is, you're getting text all the time from everybody else watching on broadcast telling you what happened, and you're so far behind, you're not even near that spot. You're like, oh man, they scored a touchdown. I don't even know. I got to wait a minute and a half to find out. And it ruins the experience. So I know a lot of people that are watching it on streaming just turn their text off because they're so far behind. The experience is different on streaming than it is through traditional linear television. And that's not going to change. And we're going to keep it that way for the foreseeable future. And the NFL, again, they know it. Other leagues know it. You'll see a lot of NBA games coming back on broadcast now. They want to be where the consumer's at.
That's great. That's great. And then, Brad, I know you gave us your email. Are you here at the convention? Where can we find you if someone wants to see you on the show floor?
We are in row, Andrew, where are we? We have a booth here. We're right off row 2000. You'll find the TVB booth, approximately 2700. Somewhere in that neighborhood, so 2700. Come by the TVB booth, say hi to myself, say hi to Andrew. We're glad to answer any questions that you have. And we're just happy to be here and have the snow melting. That's a big thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Brad, always a pleasure. Thanks once
my
again
man.
for joining us, and I'm sure I'll see you soon.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I'll take the clicker from you.
You got it.
Please, after you.